Good morning, everyone. Welcome aboard UFC Edmonton. 14 fights in the Great White North. Main event of the evening where we have Brandon Moreno taking on Amir Albazi in a flyweight scrap. You know, I love the flyweight division. I love the fights. And let's break this card down one fight at a time. We have 14 bouts, many of which are favored to end inside the distance. A key here is to potentially target fights that will take it out of the judges' hands because we've seen some suspect judging, a lot of suspect scorecards this year. And what's nice also, we've got the larger octagon. We have a crowd that will likely be filling the arena bright and early, and it should be a fantastic event. So let's get things kicked off here in the ladies 125-pound division, where we have Jamie Lynn Horth taking on Ivana Petrovic. Petrovic coming in as a significant underdog, and she's come up short in a number of bouts. We saw her UFC debut against Luana Carolina. She came in as this grappling hyped prospect, and she gets reversed against Luana Carolina in the opening seconds. She was, I believe, a minus 190 favorite in that matchup. Petrovic and loses to Luana Carolina and then goes on to win against Na Liang, which I don't rate a victory over Na Liang, especially at this level in the UFC. She's taking on Jamie Lynn Horth, who's a Canadian fighter, who's quite large, kickboxer by trade. She's going to have the crowd behind her. If Petrovic is able to put Horth on her back and keep her there for the majority of the fight, then that's the path to victory for Petrovic. But I believe that in this fight, Horth is the rightful favorite here. Now, am I going to go out of my way and put my hard-earned money on this fight? Not necessarily. I think that Horth has shown in the past that she can come up short. I believe Horth is the much older fighter here, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go to the tape here. And let's see. Yes, 34 years of age. I'm going to be picking Jamie Lynn Horth, but not with much conviction, folks. Now, you want to talk about a fight where I do have a pretty strong take. Cody Gibson taking on Chad and Heler. And Heler coming in as the plus 167 dog. This is a fighter who looks like he could fight down at the atomweight division. And Heler, very, very small for the division. He's a fighter who will go all out. He's an overachiever. He's somebody who is skilled, but fights out of a small camp up in Canada, where you don't hear about many other Canadian mixed martial artists, especially at the UFC level. He's a fighter who's 38 or so years of age. He's taking on a war-torn veteran in Cody Gibson, who is the much, much larger fighter here, who was in a tooth and nail scrap against Brad Katona, came up short there. Also, the Ray Borg fight in Eagle FC. That was a fight where I was on Ray Borg in that matchup. I was impressed with Cody Gibson in that matchup. Now, Gibson has come up short in the past as well, but when you watch the tape, you see Ann Heler is a fighter who gets tossed around at times like a rag doll, doesn't have the best chin. He's eaten some shots. He gets wobbled, and man, he will fight hard for your money. Chad and Heler came up victorious last time out, and I am on Cody Gibson here. I think that the size, the strength, the grappling acumen, and the wrestling is going to be a big, big game changer in this fight. Yes, the Canadian crowd is going to be backing their own Chad and Heler here, but the longer this fight goes, and Heler can get thrown around, I mentioned, and I think that that's going to happen. I think that there's the potential for this fight to be taken out of the judges' hands, and that's just another push for me to back Cody Gibson here. So I'm going to be picking Cody Gibson to win. And this line was in the minus 160s or so for quite some time. And now he's been up to a minus 192. I get it. So give me Cody Gibson in that matchup. Now we've got a few folks in the comment section. Brian, you got your coffee in hand, as do I. We've got the Big Pretty coffee here in her various forms of life. Good morning, Ben. Thank you for joining me on the stream this morning. Let's talk Sergey Cidi against Garrett Armfield. Now, Armfield is a solid, well-rounded fighter who brings it every time out, but it seems to come at a cost. This is a fighter who will go all out early. He will attempt to finish his opponent, and that comes at a risk. We've seen him gas himself out late in fights, and he's taking on a Canadian fighter here in Sergey Cidi, who is a long, lanky fighter, a solid striker who's coming into his own. Both of these fighters relatively young. This is a very closely lined fight, and initially I thought Armfield may be able to get his grappling going here. I think that the larger octagon is going to play in the favor of Sergey Cidi here, and the more tape I watch, the more accurate striker Cidi, I think he's going to make his punches count here, and that he's going to cause Garrett Armfield some problems. Believe that we could be in for a dangerous scorecard. I think that this is a potential where Armfield may maybe cause some problems for Cidi, especially if this hits the mat. But I think that Cidi's going to earn a controversial decision victory in this spot. It's one of those fights I'm going to be avoiding from a betting perspective. I think that both of these fighters are evenly matched, but Cidi's going to be the pick. I think that the length and the striking acumen is the difference maker there. Now, Rodrigo Nascimento taking on Alexander Romanov. Romanov, man, he's a fighter who, can you really trust at this stage in the game? Can you trust his in-fight decision-making? Not necessarily, but I will say during the first round, he is going to go for it. He typically does. He's going to try to get the body lock, take folks for a ride. And Nascimento is a fighter who, what can you say? He has been brutally knocked out in the past. He is a morbidly obese heavyweight fighter. Both of these fighters are. And Romanov's wrestling, especially early, I believe is going to pose a significant threat. I see Romanov hurting Nascimento early. And if he does get this fight finished, it's likely in the first round. I'm going to be picking Romanov to win this fight inside the distance. And if you want to get cute, you can pick Romanov via round one. I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to go out of my way to play Romanov round one. I believe that if you do make a play on this fight, it's Romanov inside the distance. I don't see this fight hitting the scorecards. And look at the number here, Romanov minus 105. That's understandable, though, because you look at the track record of Romanov, and he's a fighter who comes in, goes guns blazing, but when he faces adversity, we've seen it in many fights, he will turn and falter quickly. And Nascimento, bit of a similar type of fighter in that if things aren't going to go his way, he will fold like a cheap lawn chair. But give me Romanov in this matchup. I don't think the jiu-jitsu of Nascimento is going to be a huge factor in this fight. I think Romanov's wrestling will. Now, Youssef Zalal versus Jack Shore. Look at this line. Extremely wide here from my perspective. Jack Shore deserves a little bit more respect at the betting window, but Jack Shore clearly fighting at the wrong weight class here, should be down at 135 pounds. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if he could make flyweight, to be honest. It's going to take some serious discipline. but he shouldn't be fighting Yusuf Zala up at 145 pounds. Solid, skilled fighter, Jack Shore, but he's not doing himself any favors by fighting up at featherweight. Honestly, makes me sick to my stomach to see him competing at featherweight. And Yusuf Zalal is a well-rounded fighter with a great gas tank who is comfortable using distance and range fighting. And I think that's going to be the difference maker here. I think that from a physicality standpoint, Jack Shore, it could be a potential close fight, but Zalal, the physical, the intangibles, the metrics, a lot of them are in his favor here when you do the homework. Man, but the line is wide. I would not play Zalal as a minus 316 favorite. I will pick him to win, but I think that Jack Shore is going to stay in this fight and he will make it interesting. I just can't go out of my way to bet Zalal as a minus 300 favorite. I think that Shore is a pretty highly skilled fighter and deserves more respect than that. But Jack, come on. Cut the weight. Get down to get back to bantamweight. Cut another 10 pounds. Get down to flyweight. Let's see what you got, kid. Next time out. Charles Jourdain, you talk about a fighter who now has cut the weight and is down at bantamweight. This is a fighter who we've seen up at 155 pounds. In his UFC debut, took on Desmond Green, and Air Jourdain will bring it, but he will overcommit and he'll cause himself some unforced errors. Victor Henry is a fighter who is very well-rounded, great gas tank, but in his late 30s now, 37 or so years of age. Victor Henry is a solid grappler, great fight IQ. Josh Barnett, trained fighter, and Jourdain, this is a fight where he's going to be the larger fighter. You saw at the weigh-ins, clear size advantage. I believe that it's been a long time coming for Charles Jourdain. Another thing we have to mention here is the crowd. I believe the crowd is going to be a huge factor. You look at how far we are into this card. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the 6th fight of the card. So I suspect the arena will be filled and the crowd is going to be going nuts for Charles Jourdain here. I like the number, Charles Jourdain in the minus 130s here. And this is the time where he can prove to us what he's capable of inside of the octagon. Now, Gene Silva, look at that fight. Look at the size of Gene Silva. We know that Silva's the real deal. You look at the previous matchups, Sean Woodson and others. I was at the Shane Burgos fight. I saw Charles Jourdain in enemy territory working his way back into the fight, especially late. And both of these fighters, Jourdain and Henry, have great gas tanks, but Jourdain, I believe, is going to be willed to victory here. And I like the spot. By the way, you see the sun shining here on this festive fight morning. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel, liking the video, we've got lots of breakdowns to come. And we are only 6 events left in this calendar year for the UFC. Jasmine Jasudavicius taking on Ariane Lipski coming in as the plus 180 dog, and she's taking on a Jasudavicius who is a Canadian fighter known as, well, the self-proclaimed female GSP. We've seen her utilize her wrestling. 35 years of age, though, that is a cause for concern here. Lipski is a fighter who's been a bit of a noodle out there. Depends on who's training her. We've seen a different side of her lately. But I'm leaning towards the Jasmine Jasudavicius line here inside. I'm not going to go out of my way to play her as a minus 200 betting favorite because we've seen a Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde here out of Ariane Lipski in previous fights. So what are we getting here? One thing I can trust is Jasmine Jasudavicius to try to get her wrestling and grappling going in this fight. And I think that will, when it's all said and done, be the difference maker, unless Lipsky can catch Jasmine in a choke. That's a possibility, but I'm not banking on it. That's why I'm going to be picking Jasmine to walk away victorious. Now, we've got Ayman Zahabi taking on Pedro Munoz. Look at this line. Pedro Munoz now plus 125 underdog here. And Zahabi, we know, technical fighter. You've heard through the years that he is in the gym doing phenomenal things and has been for ages, but he doesn't compete often. And when he does, typically in Canada, he'll save himself for cards like this. And Pedro Munoz, we've seen he's a bit of a punching bag out there. He will take 3, 4 to give one. I go back to the Frankie Edgar fight, man. That fight should have gone to Pedro Munoz. That judging, you talk about suspect judging, that made me sick to my stomach. And Zahabi here, he's going to have a target sitting in front of him that he'll be able to hit. But Munoz is very difficult to finish. And one thing he'll do, he'll press forward. He's not good at cutting off angles, but the leg kicks are a real threat for Pedro Munoz. The longer this fight goes, if Pedro Munoz starts to get his leg kicks going and you see him come out of the gate investing in the leg kicks, then I advocate for hitting Munoz live. I think that that will pay dividends the longer this fight goes. But if Zahabi is fighting smart, stays on his horse, gets in and gets out, then Zahabi could have a potential advantage here. But I don't trust. Zahabi was one of the last fighters to the scale. He also doesn't have a great gas tank. I'm going to be picking the underdog. JP, yes, good to see you. Let's go get what's ours. I'm going to be picking Munoz here, but again, 38 years of age, tons of damage on Munoz. Dangerous fight for both fighters, especially at this stage in their careers. But I'm going to be picking Munoz to win this fight. I think that he's got multiple paths to victory here. Zahabi has to win a striking-based decision. Munoz, the better grappler, and also the more durable fighter. But we've seen he's a punching bag. So give me Munoz to win. Mike Malott, who came up short last time out against Neil Magny. I posted a clip of how the aftermath played out. He just ran out of gas, was winning, was dominating Neil Magny, getting his grappling going. I believe Malott was the striking coach for a while over at Team Alpha Male. And now when he competes, he does it in front of his home crowd here, Mike Malott, and he's taking on Trevin Giles, Officer Giles. Man, both of these fighters have come up short in big spots previously. I'm leaning towards the Malott side to get it done, but this is a fight where you could be in for a disaster where someone slips up, someone gets caught, and a fight's going a certain way, and one strike can turn the tide in a fight. And with these fighters, we've seen one sequence of events in this matchup could change the turn of the tide. Man, I'm going to be picking Malott here. I think if he does get it done, it's inside the distance. And as you see his track record, he usually finishes fights. But I'm not touching this fight from a betting perspective. I think that this is a very, very volatile matchup. Let's say that. So give me Malott in that matchup. Now, Marc-Andre Barriault taking on Dustin Stolfus. Stolfus is an intelligent fighter. He's a fighter who I believe is an overachiever, who is highly, highly skilled. And he's taking on a brute in Marc-Andre Barriault, who gets by on aggression and volume and having great cardio. Is that going to be enough here? You've seen this line has closed. This line's closed recently. Stolfus, I believe he is live in this spot, but Barriot, the power bar in Canada, this is a spot where I believe when it's all said and done, he'll get his hand raised. I don't trust Stolfus's power. I think that if he does win this fight, it's likely via submission, Stolfus. So take a look at that number, but I'm going to be picking Marc-Andre Barriot to walk away victorious in that matchup. Now, this is a fascinating bout. Caio Machado, who drops from heavyweight down to 205, taking on Brenson Ribeiro. By the way, there was another Claudio Ribeiro. Remember Claudio Ribeiro and his corner? Remember that walkout? Brenson Ribeiro, Claudio Ribeiro fight in a similar fashion, although Claudio Ribeiro is primarily a knockout artist. Brenson can put it all together to a certain degree, but Brazilian gassers and Caio Machado is a fighter who was a lumbering heavyweight. How is this going to translate down at 205 pounds? He's not going to be quick, I'll say that, but his durability may prove to be effective in this fight. You look at the odds here, Machado minus 146 at the betting window. I think that this could be a situation where this fight turns into a war of attrition. And if it does, I trust the Machado side. Brenson Ribeiro is going to have to catch Machado off guard. And by the way, Machado, right off the bat, put Parkin in a tough spot, grazed him with some heavy punches and wasn't able to put Parkin out. But big time underdog in that spot now walks in as the favorite here. I'm going to be picking Machado, the heavyweight, who is now coming down to 205, the lumbering, slumbering heavyweight who has lost the adipose tissue. So props to Caio Machado. And a few fighters have. Props to Charles Jourdain also for losing those extra 10 pounds. Let's see what it does in this spot. I'll be picking Machado to win. Now, we got Donata Denise taking on Derek Lewis. By the way, why was Derek Lewis not at the ceremonial weigh-ins yesterday? That was cause for concern here. You have a fighter who clearly had to cut weight to get down to 266. Sloppy, morbidly obese, joint issues, carrying around all that weight all the time, Derek Lewis. But when it's time to throw down, Lewis can cause some serious damage. And if you make one mistake, Jake, good to see you. Oh, JP, you believe the Derek Lewis fight is off? I'm going to have to check that out right now. Let's see, because he didn't show up at weigh-ins yesterday. Hang on one second. Let's see. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, I'm not seeing it on. Yeah, look at that. It's not showing up. He withdrew from his fight. Wow, he's been forced off the card 19 minutes ago. It was posted. So, hey, thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Wow. All right. So I wake up and I am enlightened by my guests here. So, hey, I'm glad we don't have to dig much deeper into that fight because sloppy heavyweights, disgusting. It's a shame that division even has fighters rostered on it who cannot take care of themselves. Now, Erin Blanchfield taking on Rose Namajunas, co-main event of the evening. I was at Erin Blanchfield's fight last time out in Atlantic City. In fact, I was sitting next to family members and friends of hers. Everybody was wearing their shirts and hats and going wild. And Blanchfield against Manon Fiorot was able to have some early success, but then was completely out of the fight for the majority of the rest of the rounds because her striking acumen is rudimentary, and her ability to close distance is a real problem. And she's taking on a spry Rose Namajunas who has great footwork, can cut angles, is comfortable fighting a horrific game plan to try to win a fight. You watch the Carla Esparza fight, she would not engage at all in that fight. Carla Esparza, though, is a very small 115-pound fighter who had no business. Oh, man. What do I say? Carla Esparza, one trick pony, but that was effective here. And Namajunas just refused to engage. And now Namajunas has fought Tracy Cortez and a few other fighters who, even though Blanchfield and Cortez have fought in the past, and you want to talk MMA math, Cortez has a victory over Blanchfield. If you ran that back, I would probably guess, if I'm on in that fight, Blanchfield maybe minus 300 currently against Tracy Cortez. But in this matchup, Blanchfield coming off of the fight against Manon Fiorot, who was massive. I was shocked when I watched them inside the octagon how large Fiorot is. And she was caught in some serious problems on the mat briefly. But if Blanchfield gets Rose in a tough spot on the mat, I suspect she's going to finish her. Those hips of Blanchfield are a real problem, and Namajunas could potentially have some solid cardio here. But I think the physicality of Blanchfield, she's going to have to, hopefully she learned her lesson. She's going to have to close distance effectively and get a hold of Rose and drain that battery, drain that gas tank. Blanchfield, the much younger fighter, excellent fighter who is not as well-rounded as we thought she was. But I think that in this spot, as minus a 135 favorite, I'm rolling with Erin Blanchfield here. She's going to be my pick. Rose has been around the block. We've seen her falter late in fights. The fight, oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank here? Andrade, the fight against Jessica Andrade, we saw her just try and get out of there, just try and survive to live another day. Andrade was coming, and I know that they're totally different fighters, but the take-home point here is that if Rose is gotten to from a physicality standpoint, she will wilt and get out of there. So I'm going to be picking Erin Blanchfield here. I think this is a get-right spot for her. I also like that she is coming off of a loss here. I think we'll see a fiery Blanchfield, and I'm going to be picking Erin to win. Let's see. Do you think the larger cage helps Rose? Yes, I do. But also, get this, JP. The last time out, Erin fought in the larger cage against Manon Fiorot and was able to have some early success against Fiorot in that matchup. And I think that that is magnified against someone like Rose Namajunas, who does not have near the physicality or the strength of a Manon Fiorot or a Blanchfield for that matter. I think that Rose is going to take an L here, and I'll be picking Blanchfield. Now, main event of the evening. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And if I know we have a bunch of folks watching, if you wouldn't mind hitting the subscribe and like button. We've been doing our thing for many years, and this is what it's all about, breaking down these fights. And you've got the flyweight whisperer here speaking about a main event of the evening. Brandon Moreno taking on Amir Albazi, and Albazi fighting out of a great camp, did his camp at Fight Ready here, coming in as the plus 148 underdog, coming off of a controversial victory inside of the Apex against Kai Kara France. And Kai Kara-France, not known as a grappler, but his defensive grappling was put on display there. And that fight went the wrong way. I thought that Kai Kara-France ended up winning that fight, but Amir Albazi gifted a win, and he is taking on a Brandon Moreno, who, if you are going to take on a Brandon Moreno, this might be the time to do it, because Moreno is coming off of 2 split decision back-to-back losses where he fought his ass off, came up short, and looked at times in fights where he was weathered and a shell of himself. I got to be honest, it seemed like his feet were slipping all over the octagon against Royval and against Pantoja. The back-taking ability of Pantoja caused Moreno some problems. And then the cardio of Royval was causing Moreno some real problems. And what's wild to me is Brandon Royval came in as a short notice replacement, and he took on Moreno in Mexico City, and Royval had the better gas tank. Now, there's been talk that Moreno was injured, and you talk about injuries. What's crazy to me is Moreno acts and says that he took a lot of time off here, but look at the amount of time off between fights. It's similar to what he's done in the past. Maybe it was a mental break, but he actually didn't take much time off. But you look at a fighter who did take time off due to multiple orthopedic and nerve injuries. Amir Albazi has had some serious health scares over the past year and a half, and he's coming into Edmonton, Canada. A massive crowd will be in their seats looking to go nuts and root for these fighters. What I love about the flyweight division is you have 25 minutes to figure things out, right? And is this a situation where we're going to see Moreno falter once again? I know he's got Team Fortis behind him, their coach. And Moreno in this spot, he is the much more athletic fighter. You watch the stare downs, and I know there was an outdoor stare down and then a weigh-in stare down. Both of them, they were wearing shoes. We'll get a real eye test when they're inside of the octagon. But what I saw yesterday, while they were wearing similar size shoes, Moreno seemed to be the bigger fighter. And there have been pictures posted of Moreno when he was out of camp and now when he's in camp. It's amazing how he's been able to change his physique and get back into it. But Moreno, the mileage on him is a concern. I know he can get up for fights, and he's going to have to stay on the gas pedal here and not get submitted. That's easier said than done. Amir Albazi is a real threat on the mat. The back taking ability, the control, the commitment to that. He was within a second or two of choking out Kai Kara-France, Amir Albazi. And imagine the odds if that is put into play, or if Kai Kara-France was actually choked out. Albazi come off of neck surgery and a long layoff. You're going with Moreno. Well, this is a fascinating matchup, and the more tape I watch, and I realize that Moreno's a fighter's fighter. You know, he's been bloody, he's been beaten, and he's come back for more. I don't believe Albazi's going to have the ability to put the serious volume that he'll need to put on to put away Moreno and to take Moreno out of his element. That's the thing here. When you see Moreno heavy on his front foot and he's leaning forward and he's wanting Albazi to throw at him, Albazi's going to throw that overhand right, and he doesn't have much more than that from a striking standpoint. Moreno is the much better striker here, a much more fluid fighter. Albazi, if Fight Ready's done their homework, which I'm sure they have, they should implement a game where Albazi's implementing leg kicks early, that could be a potential path to victory, is to chop that lead leg of Moreno. But that could come as a cost. You've seen with Jose Aldo and others. I don't trust. I know Albazi went all 5 rounds, but I don't trust his gas tank in this spot. So I'm going to be picking Brandon Moreno. I think that the crowd is going to be a factor, even though it's in Canada, and even though he's coming off of Moreno coming up short in Mexico City, in his home country. I know Moreno's from Tijuana, right? And that was not a good look for Moreno last time out. But when you talk about the skill set and the level of fighters, I don't think Amir Albazi is at Moreno's level. If you want to catch Moreno at the right time to beat him, this could potentially be it. And this is a show me spot too for Moreno. We've seen him come up twice now short in bouts where he's had a huge backing. The Pantoja fight, that was a fight where you've lost to the guy multiple times in the past. And I will say this too. Moreno had his moments. That was a very, very, very close fight against Pantoja. If Pantoja doesn't take the back, and one thing I will say also is Albazi, I know he did it against Kai Kara-France a couple of times, but if he doesn't lock in the body triangle when he has Moreno's back, Moreno could work his way out of it. And sometimes Albazi doesn't lock up that body triangle. So if that's just something to look out for, if Moreno takes the back, I mean, if Albazi takes the back of Moreno, but give me Brandon Moreno to walk away victorious in that spot. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in this morning. I see the numbers are going up. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. While you got me here for a few minutes, and we're at the 36-minute mark. We've talked 13 fights now that the Lewis Denise fight got called off, which I'll be honest, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Go get what's yours. Have a phenomenal rest of your Saturday, and let's do this, my brothers. Let's do it. Let's get after it today.